Hello all. Hello all. Welcome again. This is session on STM32H7. Today we will look into the advanced control and general purpose and basic timers GPTIM. In this we'll quickly go through overview, key features available and block diagram of timer 9 and timer clock schemes, counting period management, counting mode, timer as internal timing resource, input capture as well as advanced capture options available, output compare, one pulse mode, a few PWM modes, some more few PWM modes and advanced PWM modes, cascading timers, examples of synchronized operation and motor control features available, dead time insertion and block communication, that is 6-step block communication, break functions and ADC triggering, ADC synchronization example and interrupts and DMA burst mode in the DMA and low power modes, and have a quick look at debug and a few useful formulas for this thing, and dimming a LED application example, application tips and tricks, and we'll have a quick instance features of STM32H7. Okay, please subscribe to our channel if you did not subscribe by clicking subscribe button and bell icon for your personal notifications. If you really like this video, upcoming video, please press like button. Let's quickly move on to the key features or overview. The STM32 embeds multiple timer providing timing resources for software or hardware tasks. The software task mainly consists of providing the time basis, timeout events, generation and time triggers. The hardware tasks are related to IOs. The timers can generate waveforms on their outputs, measure incoming signals, parameters and react to external events on their inputs. The STM32 timers are very versatile and provide multiple operating modes to offload the CPU from repetitive and time critical tasks while minimizing interfacing circuitry needs. All STM32 timers are based, with the sole exception of the low power timer, are based on same scalable architecture. Once the timer operating principles are known, they are valid for any of the timers. This architecture includes interconnection features and allows several timers to be combined into larger configurations. Lastly, some of the timers feature specific functions for electric motor control and digital power conversion, such as lighting or digital switched mode power supplies are also available. So some of the key features. Here are the key features of STM32 timers. All timers are based on the same architecture and are available in several derivatives listed later in this presentation. The timers mainly differ in the number of inputs and outputs they have. For a pure time base without IOs to an advanced control version with 9 IOs. Most of the timers feature 16-bit counters, while some have 32-bit counters. Some features may not be present on the smallest timer derivatives, for example, DMA, synchronization and up-down counting modes. Most of the timers can be linked and synchronized to build larger time-based timers, have a higher number of synchronous waveforms or handle complex timings and waveforms. Within a timer, each and every channel can be configured independently as an input, typically for capture, or as an output, typically for a PWM, pulse width modulation. The timers can serve as trigger for other peripherals, for instance to start ADC conversions or to monitor the internal clocks thanks to the interconnect matrix So in the next slide, we'll look into the block diagram of the medium feature timer 9 timer, TIM9 timer. The timer kernel consists of 16-bit up counter coupled with an auto reload register to program the counting period. The two timer channels are controlled by two capture compare registers. You can see here in this diagram. The counter is fed by the clock and trigger control, also responsible for the timer chaining. Shown on the left are the input stage and the input conditioning circuitry, while on the right we have the output stage. We have to note that time TIMX channel 1 CH1 and TIMX CH2 appear on both sides to indicate they are both input and output capable. They are both IO capable. The timer features multiple clocking options. So let's have a quick look at the timer clocking schemes. The timer and trigger controller, also responsible for timer chaining, handles the clock for the counter. The default clock comes from the reset and clock counter, controller linked to one of APB clock domains. The various timers are shared on the two APB domains to implement LP, that is low power schemes, typically one high speed APB and one low speed APB to limit the current drawn by the peripherals, including the timers. External timer clocking allows counting of external events or to have a counting period externally adjusted. The clock source can be provided by other on-chip timers using one of the four internal trigger inputs, ITR1 through ITR4. Input pins 1 and 2 can also serve as external clocks, with the option of including digital filters to remove spurious events. The external trigger input ETR can be configured as an external clock with a digital filter, programmable edge sensitivity, and a first basic scalar stage to reduce the frequency of incoming signals if needed. Lastly, the quadrature signals from an encoder can be processed to provide a clock and counting directions as described later in this presentation. So, in the next slide explains how to adjust the timer counting period. Each timer embeds a linear clock prescaler, which allows you to divide the clock by an integer between 1 and 65536. This allows the counting pace to be precisely adjusted. For instance, a division by 80 will yield a precise 1 MHz counting rate when the APB clock is 80 MHz. Isn't it? 80 divided by 80 gives 1 MHz. The auto reload register defines the counting period. In down counting mode, the counter is automatically reloaded with the period value when it underflows. In up counter mode, the counter rolls over and is reset when it exceeds the auto reload value. An update event is issued when the counter underflows or overflows and a new period starts. It triggers an interrupt or DMA request that is used for adjusting timer parameters synchronously with its period, which is useful for the real-time control. This update event triggers the transfer from preload to active registers for multiple parameters, and in particular for the clock prescaler, auto reload value, compare registers, and PWM modes, all the 4 modes. An 8-bit programmable repetition counter allows you to decouple the interrupt issuing rate from the counting period and have for instance 1 interrupt every single second, third, and up to 256th PWM period. This is particularly useful when dealing with the high PWM frequencies. Some of STM32 timers features up or down counting modes. Let's look at the counting modes. The advanced control timer 1 and 8, and the general purpose timers 2, 3, 4 and 5. The counting direction can be programmed by software or automatically managed by the timer in center aligned PWM mode. You can see in the figure, center aligned figure. In this mode, the counting direction changes automatically on counter overflow and underflow. For a given PWM switch frequency, this mode reduces the acoustic noise by doubling the effective current ripple frequency, thus providing the optimum trade-off between the power stages, switching losses and noise. The counting direction can be automatically handled when the timer is in encoder mode. Quadrature encoder are typically used for high accuracy rotor position sensing in electrical motors or for digital potentiometers. For the two outputs of a quadrature encoder sensor, also called as an incremental encoder. Okay, the timer extracts a clock on each and every active edge and adjusts the counting direction depending on the relative phase shift between two incoming signals. The timer counter thus directly holds the angular position of the motor or potentiometer. The simplest use case for timer is to provide an internal time base. Okay, this is commonly used by the software routines either to provide periodic interrupt or single shot timeout protection. The timer can also provide periodic triggers to other on-chip peripherals such as ADC, DAC and other timers. The update event from the timer, typically on counter overflow, is the usual means to have the software time base interrupt or to trigger a trigger a periodic event, to be precise. The basic timers TAM6 and TAM7 are the best suited for such a task, as they are simplest timer derivatives with no I/O channel. It is also possible to generate internal timings using any other timer using compare events or using the trigger outputs on any other timer. It is possible to generate multiple timing events with a single timer using multiple compare channels. So this is an advantage, isn't it? So let's look at input capture. Upcoming slide will describe the input capture features. Each channel can be divided individually configured as input capture with several signal conditioning options. An input can be mapped on two capture channels, typically to differentiate rising edge from falling edge capture. I hope you all understand what is rising edge and falling edge capture. The edge sensitivity is programmable and can be rising edge, falling edge or both edges. An event prescaler allows capture of one event every 2, 4 or 8 events. This decreases the CPU burden when processing high frequency signals and allows the measurement to be more accurate, since it is performed over multiple input signals periods. Spurious transition events due to noise or bounces can be removed using a programmable digital filter. The figure shows how signal is filtered when the filter acceptance is set to 4. In uppercase, a clean rising edge capture is triggered for sampling, 4 sampling periods after the rising edge. You can check in the figure now. As one can notice looking at the internal counter value. In uppercase, a clean rising edge capture is triggered for sampling period after the rising edge, as one can notice looking at the internal counter value. In lowercase, a glitch causes the filter counter to be reset and capture to happen after 4 successive samples at high level have been counted. Isn't it? You can check in the figure. That's how it is. After 4 it is doing so. Once the capture trigger is issued, the timer's counter is transferred into the capture register and an interrupt or a DMA request can be issued. If a new capture occurs before the previous one has been read, the capture register is overwritten and an over capture flag is set for the software to manage this condition if needed. We will see some of the advanced capture options. The clear on capture mode causes a counter reset immediately after the capture has been triggered. This allows a direct measurement of the period, while a traditional free running counter would require additional computation to obtain the period following the trigger. In PWM input mode, the timer is able to capture both the period and the duty cycle of an incoming PWM signal. The input signal is internally routed to any of the both two capture channels. The signal's rising edge is captured on input capture 2 to provide the period value with the clear on capture mode. The falling edge is captured by capture 1 channel. You can see the figure, no? Yeah. And input capture 2. So the ratio between, yeah. The duty cycle is simply corresponds to the ratio between input capture 1 and input capture 2. Lastly, the timer includes an XOR function to combine the 3 input channels with XOR logic. This is typically used to handle the 3 120-degree phase shift signals coming from the Hall sensors in electrical motors. This allows you to have a clear on capture happening on each and every edge of the 3 signals and have a capture value directly useful for speed regulations. So let's look into the output capture features. A compare event is generated when the counter machine matches the value of the compare register. This event can trigger an interrupt or a DMA request and can be reflected on the corresponding output pin by an output set, output reset or output toggle. I repeat, this event can trigger an interrupt or a DMA request and can be reflected on the corresponding output pin by an output set, output reset or output toggle. Okay. The compare register can be preloaded. The preload must be disabled if the multiple compare values must be written during a counting period. On the contrary, the use of preload mode must be preferred for applications with real-time constraints, since this gives an higher time margin for the software to update the compare register with the next value. The transfer from the preload to the active value is triggered by an update event when the counter overflows or underflows. The output compare mode can be preloaded so as to allow glitchless transition from a PWM mode to a forced on or off state, for instance. Okay. So one pulse mode is one more node which is used to generate a pulse of programmable length in response to an external event. The pulse can start as soon as the input trigger arrives or after a programmable delay. The capture 1 register CCR1 value defines the pulse start time, while the auto reload register ARR value defines the end of pulse. The effective pulse width is then defined as the difference between the ARR and CCR1 register values. You can see in this figure, no? The waveform can be programmed to have a single pulse generated by the trigger or to have a continuous pulse train started by a single trigger. One pulse mode also offers a re-triggerable option. In this case, a new trigger arriving before the end of the pulse will cause the counter to be reset and the pulse width to be extended accordingly. Please have a look and take some time to recollect. And all points have been highlighted on the left of it. Then we will quickly jump onto few PWM modes. The standard aligned PWM mode is programmed with the auto reload register defining the period and compare register defining the duty cycle. The counter being in up only or down only counting mode. You can see in the figure. A single timer can generate up to 4 PWM signals with independent duty cycles and identical frequencies. When multiple PWM waveforms are generated by the same timer, all falling edges occur at the same time. Hence the term edge aligned. Okay. On the contrary, the rising and falling edges of center aligned PWMs are not synchronized with the counter rollover, so the switching time varies with the duty cycle value. So this is achieved by programming the counter in up-down mode. This mode is interesting as it spreads the switching noise when multiple PWMs are generated with the same timer. This is a key feature for three-phase PWM generation for electric motors or motor drives, since it allows you to double the frequency of the current ripple for a given switching frequency. For instance, a 10 kHz PWM will generate inaudible 20 kHz current ripple. This minimizes the switching losses due to PWM frequency while guaranteeing silent PWM operation. A variant of center aligned mode is the asymmetric PWM mode, where two compare registers define the turning on and off of the PWM signals. This provides higher resolution for pulse width setting. Since turn on and turn off timers are individually defined, it also allows the generation of phase shift PWM signals necessary to drive DC to DC converters based on the full bridge phase shift topology. In this case, the timer provides two PWM signals with identical frequencies with 50% duty cycle and a phase shift varying from 0 to 180 degrees. So let's have a look at some more PWM modes. Combined PWM modes. So this mode allows a logic combination of two PWM signals to be generated by adjacent channels, output compare 1 and 2 or output compare 3 and 4. The PWMs can be odd or ANDed to create complex waveforms. Typically, this allows you to have two periodic pulse generated with any pulse width and any phase relationship value. The combined three-phase mode specifically targets three-phase motor control applications. In this case, channel 5 of the timer can be combined with any of the three channels 1, 2 and 3 to insert a low state in the middle of a centered low state in the middle of the centered pattern PWM signal. This mode greatly simplifies the implementation of low-cost current sensing techniques for three-phase motor using a technique usually referred to as zero vector insertion. Some more specific PWM modes where either the frequency or the duty cycle can be driven by external signals. The timer can provide variable frequency signals using an external reset signal connected either on the ETR on the channel 1 or 2 inputs. The purpose of this mode is to provide a signal with a fixed on or off time and a continuously adjusted frequency controlled by the hardware. The timer provides control for the on or off time using the compare register with the auto reload register, guarantees that the PWM will not stop if the external reset is missing. This is an advantage, thus providing a safe control in boundary conditions. This technique is used for a variety of purposes such as transition mode, PFC, power factor controller, okay, for mains supplied applications, and current controlled digital LED lighting, etc. Another mode for timer is to have the duty cycle controlled by hardware with either an on-chip comparator or an off-chip signal. The PWM operates at a fixed frequency. The maximum duty cycle is set by the compare resistor and the actual value controlled cycle by cycle. This is used for applications required current control PWMs, pulse width modulations, typically for driving DC motors or solenoids. In this case, a comparator monitors the peak current values into the load. As soon as the current exceeds a programmed threshold, the comparator resets the PWM output, which is then automatically restarted at the next PWM period, thus providing a controlled peak current value. Interesting, isn't it? So how about cascading timers? The trigger controller allows you to cascade multiple timers in a master or slave configuration. A timer can control one or more timers as the master timer or be controlled by another timer as a slave. The clock and trigger controller acts as a link between the timers. In master mode, it can redirect outside the timer multiple internal control signals to an on-chip TRGO, that is trigger output. In slave mode, it gathers multiple inputs or multiple inputs on TRGI, means the main trigger input coming from the external trigger pin ETR, or from one of the four internal trigger inputs ITR1 to ITR4 connected to the other TRGO outputs. Additionally, the input capture 1 and 2 pins can also be used as an internal trigger, typically to reset the counter. Slave and master modes can be programmed independently. A given timer can thus simultaneously be operating slave and master modes in cascaded configuration, accepting input triggers while providing output triggers. Next, we will move on to an operating modes and the signal exchanged between timers. In master mode, either 8 options are given for in master mode 8 options are given for selecting the trigger to be sent on TRGO output. The output can be single synchronization pulse issued upon counter reset, counter enable, which corresponds to the counter start, the update event, or the compare one match event. Alternatively, the TRGO output can also transmit one of 4 waveforms generated, including PWM signals, to the other timer modules. In slave mode, the timer operating mode is controlled by TRGI input. In triggered mode, the counter start is externally controlled. This mode is used for simultaneously starting multiple timers. In reset mode, the counter is reset by a rising edge on the TRGI input. Okay, typically for variable frequency PWM operations. A combined mode including the reset and trigger can be used for retriggerable one pulse mode generation. In gated mode, shown in the figure, the counter is active only while the level on the input signal is high. Okay, this signal either becomes from an input or from another timer in waveform generation mode. In this case, synchronization pulses issued on reset, enable, update or compare match cannot be used. Lastly, the slave mode selection includes clock related modes such as quadrature encoder decoding or external clock modes mentioned earlier in this presentation. After this, we will see a simple example of synchronized operation. Okay. So have a look at this. So we have examples here. The first example shows how 4 timers can be simultaneously started. A mechanism allows the master timer to start slightly delayed to compensate for the master or slave link delay and have all timers synchronized with cycle accuracy. By combining the channels of timers 2, 3, 4 and 9 as shown in this figure, it is possible to have a 14 synchronized PWM channels. The second example shows how to create 48-bit timer by cascading 3 timers. Here the update event generated on counter rollover is used as the input clock for the following slave timer, so that timer 3's counter holds the least significant 16 bits. Timer 2's counter holds the medium bits, that is bits 16 to 31. And the timer 9's counter holds the upper bit from bit 32 to bit 47. If you want, I can zoom it. So, do you want me to repeat? Yeah. In the first example, you can see the examples. Shows how 4 timers can be simultaneously started. A mechanism allows the master timer to start slightly delayed to compensate for the master or slave link delay and have all timers synchronized with cycle accuracy. By combining the channels of the timers 2, 3, 4 and 9 as shown here, no? It is possible to have up to 14 synchronized PWM channels. The second example shows how to create a 48-bit timer by cascading 3 timers. Okay. Here is the updated event generated on the counter rollover is used as the input clock for the following slave timer, so that timer 3's counter holds the least significant 16 bits. Timer 2's counter holds the medium bits, that is bits 16 to 31. And the timer 9's counter holds the upper bits from bit 32 to bit 47. It's a little tricky, but it's quite... Yeah, I'll copy and paste it. Sorry for the interruption. Okay. After this, we will move on to the motor control features available. 4 main electric motor control features. These are all the 4 main. The timer includes specific PWM modes for controlling power switches, in addition to center aligned and combined 3-phase PWMs previously described. No? The timer features dead time insertion for complementary PWM generation and 6-step modes for driving brushless DC motors. Okay. No. Quadrature encoders and Hall sensors are used for fine and coarse position feedback, while tachometer generators are used for cost-effective speed feedback and just require a clear-on capture mode. Lastly, the timer includes synchronized ADC triggering position options necessary to properly manage voltage and current sensing and avoid any acquisition issues due to switching noise in power stages. Dead time insertion, right? So we will discuss after this actually, immediately. So hardware dead time generation provides two non-overlapping complementary PWMs for a reference PWM signal. The STM32 timer includes up to 3 dead time generators for OC1, OC2 and OC3 channels. The dead time duration is programmed with an 8-bit values. This value can be locked by the user to prevent this critical value from being corrupted during runtime. This is done by setting a write once lock bit, which switches the dead time register into read-only mode until the next MCU resets. Dead time insertion is necessary when driving half bridges, whereas where a pair of transistors are connected in series between two power rails. In this case, it is necessary to insert some time before the switch on of one slide to allow the other side. No, in this case, it is necessary to insert some time before the switch on of one side to allow other side to switch off, taking into account physically physical switching characteristics. Half bridges are usually found in DC to DC converters for DC or stepper motor driver using the full bridge topology shown here, or for 3-phase inverters with 3 PWM pairs. In upcoming stuff we will discuss about 6-step or block communications. Okay. So 6-step drive, also called block communication, is managed with STM32 timer. It consists of 2 timers, one handling the 3 Hall sensor signals while the other manages the PWM generation synchronized with the rotor angular position, generating 6 successive steps. The first timer operates in clear-on capture mode triggered by 3 inputs. A compare register, here comparator 2 in this figure, is responsible for adding a programmable delay between the raw angular position and the communication time. The capture register 1 holds the timing interval between successive Hall sensor edges and is necessary for the speed regulation loop. The compare to match event is propagated to the slave timer through the TRGO output. These events serve as communication events and trigger changes for PWM generation. For each of the 6 steps of the sequence, the states of the 6 outputs are defined to be either forced active or inactive or generating a PWM signal. Okay. The transition from one step to other is preloaded by software in the communication interrupt routine and automatically transferred by the hardware to reprogram the output operating mode when the next communication arrives. Figure at right shows the 6 PWM signals for 2 consecutive complete 6-step sequences together with the current in one of the motor phases. Yeah, I'll zoom it. Is it visible? Sorry. After this, we'll move to the brake function. A brake event triggers a hardware protection mechanism that automatically disables the PWM outputs and forces them to a user configurable state, either low impedance with high or low level or high impedance. The logic circuitry works asynchronously without any clock. This guarantees the functionality even in case of a system clock failure and avoids any clock related propagation time that would tend to delay the protection. This feature is available on all timers having complementary PWM outputs, which are capable of performing power conversion tasks. Timer 1 and timer 8. Timer 1 and timer 8 have 2 separated brake channels. This provides a dual level protection scheme where, for instance, a low priority protection with all switches off can be overridden by a high priority or higher priority protection with the low side switches active. I repeat, for instance, a low priority protection with all switches off can be overridden by a high priority protection with low side switches active. Furthermore, a dead time delay can be inserted immediately before entering the fault mode for safely disabling the power stage. This prevents potential shoot-through conditions. Let's consider, for instance, that the fault occurs when the high side PWM is on, while the safe state is programmed to have high side switched off and the low side switched on. At the time fault occurs, the system will first disable the high side PWM and insert a dead time before switching on the low side. That's how prevents potential shoot through conditions. Is this clear? Let's move on to one more brake function. So multiple brake sources can be combined for trigger a brake event. A system level source can be selected. The CSS, clock security system, indicating an external clock failure. Brake inputs can be selected with the alternate function controller on the MCU pinout. External sources can be conditioned before entering the brake detection unit. This allows selection of the proper polarity and discarding of spurious glitches by means of a digital filter. Let's look at ADC triggering then. ADC can be triggered with the most of STM32 timers with 3 options. This can be done using compare event. The ADC conversion will start on a given compare match. The list of supported compare events varies from one timer to the other as shown in the table. Okay. The TRGO out event can also be used on certain timers. This gives extra flexibility since the TRGO can be any of the compare events or timer internal control signals such as register update, counter reset or trigger input. On other hand, this prevents the TRGO from being used for synchronization purposes. For this reason, timers 1 and 8 also have an additional TRGO2 output fully devoted to ADC triggering. The TRGO2 offers 16 possibilities including the 6 compare events and possibility to have a dual trigger per PWM period by combining the compare 4 and 6 events. This also leaves the TRGO free for multiple timer synchronization scheme. Let's look at an ADC synchronization example. Go through this, then let's look at a ADC synchronization example. So in this example, PWM synchronized ADC trigger for 3-phase motor control. It is mandatory to have ADC readings synchronized with PWM generated for controlling the power stage. This allows extraction of average value of the current waveform ripple and makes sure the ADC reading is done at the adequate distance from the ringing due to the power switches. Shown here on the left is a 3-phase motor inverter. The 6 switches are controlled by 3 complementary PWM pairs with dead time inserted, while the current in the motor windings is measured using shunt resistors placed in the 3 half bridges bottom side. The right side shows the timer's counter, compare 1 and compare 2 values, and corresponding PWM outputs for low side switches controlled by channel 1N, CH1N and CH2N. The 2 bottom waveforms represent the current in the motor phase and the image of the current obtained on the shunt resistors. With this low cost topology, the voltage can only be measured when the low side switches are on, which explains the square wave shaped signal obtained on the ADC input. Okay, bottom one. In this case, the ADC trigger is generated on the counter rollover. This allows the reading to be done precisely in the middle of the period and get the average value of a signal with significant ripple. Additionally, using a PWM synchronized ADC trigger also guarantees that the ADC conversion will be done away from the ringing noise present on the shunt voltages. Is that clear? Yeah, have a read over. Next we will move on to the interrupts and DMA request sources. Interrupts and DMA. Look at the table. Most of the events are able to generate either an interrupt or an DMA request, and even the two simultaneously. The update is issued when the counter overflows or underflows. It is mainly used to refresh the timer's runtime settings at the beginning of the PWM period and maximum the interval before the next register update. The repetition counter allows you to skip some PWM periods and decrease the number of interrupts or DMA requests at high PWM frequency. Each of the 4 capture or compare events have their own interrupt and DMA. A triggered event on TRGI input, regardless of trigger source, can also trigger an interrupt or DMA request. Lastly, additional sources of interrupts and DMA requests are communication and break events on timer 1, 8, 15, 16 and 17 only. I repeat, additional sources of interrupts and DMA requests or commutation and break events on timers 1, 8, 15, 16 and 17. Note that the break event does not generate DMA request. So timer includes a DMA bus to have multiple registers reprogrammed with a single DMA stream, right? This allows the modification of the several runtime parameters simultaneously. For instance, duty cycle and the frequency of several channels, or dynamically change the timer configuration by writing the configuration registers. Look at the figure here. The example shows how a table containing 3 compare values can be transferred into the compare registers with a single DMA stream when a new PWM period starts. Okay, the DMA must be programmed in memory to peripheral mode, pointing to a unique location in the timer, virtual register time TIMX underscore DMAR. Okay, when the update event occurs, the timer sends a number of DMA requests corresponding to the programmed burst length. Each value is then automatically redirected from the virtual register into the active register targeted. On the next update event, 3 new compare values are transferred again. In this example, this mechanism saves the 2 DMA streams that would normally be necessary for such an update scheme. Yeah, I'll paste it, don't worry. We'll look at it, then we'll move on to the LPMs, low power modes. The timer is active in run and sleep modes while it is frozen in stop mode. The timer state and register's content are preserved and the timer directly resumes operation when the MCU is woken up. But in standby mode, the timer is powered down and must be completely re-initialized when exiting from this mode. Timer state in debug mode can also be configured. That we'll speak in the next. So the timer state in debug mode can be configured with 1 configuration bit per timer. If the debug bit is reset, the timer clock is maintained during a breakpoint. Okay. If the debug bit is set, the timer's counter is stopped as soon as the core is halted. I repeat, debug bit is reset, the timer clock is maintained during a breakpoint. So if it is set, timer's counter is stopped as soon as the core is halted. Additionally, the outputs of the timer having complementary outputs are disabled and forced to an inactive state. This feature is extremely useful for applications where the timers are controlling power switches or electrical motors. It prevents the power stages from being damaged by excessive current or motors from being left in an uncontrolled state when hitting a breakpoints. Let's have a look at a few useful formulas for how to set timers PWM frequency. This parameter is defined using the auto reload value ARR programmed in TIMEX underscore ARR register and the clock prescaler programmed in TIMEX underscore PSC register. The PWM frequency is given by the timer operating frequency FTIM divided by ARR plus 1 times the clock prescaler plus 1, ARR plus 1 into PSC plus 1. Practically, finding both register values is an iterative process where one must start from PSC equal to 0, that is no clock division. This guarantees the PWM will have the finest possible resolution. In this case, the ARR value is simply the ratio between the timer clock frequency and the PWM frequency, the whole minus 1. The second formula. If this equation yields an ARR value above the timer's ARR range, either a 16-bit or a 32-bit value depending on the selected timer. The computation must be redone with a higher prescaler value with the following sequence: an ARR value equal to the timer clock frequency divided by 2 over the PWM frequency, the whole minus 1. Then an ARR value equal to timer clock frequency divided by 3 over the PWM frequency, the whole minus 1, and so on up to the point where the error value fits within the programmable range. Is this clear? How to program a duty cycle for a given PWM frequency? This parameter is defined using an auto-relayed value ARR programmed by the same timex_ARR register and compare value programmed in the timex_CCRX register. The duty cycle does not depend on the PWM frequency and is given by the compare value plus 1. Over the auto-reload value plus 1. CRRX plus 1 divided by ARR plus 1. Another useful indication is the PWM resolution. This gives the number of possible duty cycle values and indicates how fine the control on the PWM signal will be. The resolution expressed in number of duty cycle steps is simply equal to the ratio between timer clock frequency FTIM and the PWM frequency FPWM, the whole minus 1. Another way of expressing it is in bits as for giving a DAC, digital to analog converter, output resolution. In this case, the resolution is based to algorithm of ratio between the timer clock frequency and the timer PWM frequency, the whole minus 1. Let's see an application practical example of PWM usage for dimming a low power LED. This can be done directly using a PWM output as long as the current does not exceed the rated output current. See in the figure. The first step is to program the frequency to be set to 1 kHz. When doing the ARR value computation with no prescaler and a time operating frequency of 200 MHz, the result is 1999999. Which is above the 16-bit range that can be used with timer 1. The timer prescaler must be set to 4 to have the timer operations at 40 MHz, and this result is in a valid value of 39999 for the ARR register. The second step consists of computing the compare register value to have 20% duty cycle. This yields a value of 79999. Lastly, the dimming resolution can be computed from formulas present in previous slides. With a timer running at 40 MHz, a 1 kHz PWM provides for 40,000 dimming steps, which correspond to an equivalent resolution of 15.3 bits. This slide explains a common support case where the whole timer is configured, the counter is started, the PWM mode is enabled as well as the corresponding outputs, but still there is no activity on the pins. So usually this is because the MOE bit or the CCXE bit was not set. The CCXE bit in time TIMX CCER register defines the configuration of a CCX channel as input or output. The CC1E bit must be set to get a PWM signal on channel 1. For timers equipped with the dead time generators, that is we mentioned earlier, right? Timers 1, 8, 15 and 16 and 17. A main output enable MOE bit in the timex underscore BDTR register controls all outputs and acts as a circuit breaker in case of fault detection on the break input. Global disable of all PWM outputs. The MOE must be set or armed to have the outputs enabled. This is valid even if the timer is used without dead time insertion and the timer is used for general purpose application. So for more information, look at ADC and DAC peripherals, which we will discuss in the later. So have a look at instances features table here provided here. Here is the explanation for it. After going through this table, please for more details refer to resources like AN2592, AN4013, AN4507 and AN4776 references. How to achieve 32-bit resolution using a link system in F10X and L15X. Cross series timer overview and PWM resolution enhancement and GP timer cookbook. Thank you for your time. Hope we have covered all the timer general purpose advanced control and basic timers of GPTIM module in STM32H7. If you really like this to be useful, please click like button, and if you did not subscribe to our channel, please click subscribe button and press bell icon for your personal notifications onto the embedded systems. Thank you.